Starting out good.
Okay, which way?
You're good.
But thank you, Marty, for that introduction. Thank you, Lori, for inviting me, and for all of you for being here. On behalf of Texas Scorecard, again, I'm Erin Anderson. I write on state and local issues. I'll jump right to, there's a handout coming out. I'll jump right to the bottom. I'm so old school because, you know, the projector and thing, I forget to advance it and whatnot. But this you can take home, and right at the bottom, it'll tell you our website, texasscorecard.com, and where you can go and to subscribe to our absolutely free email updates on every weekday morning. So during the legislative session, which we're still sort of in, right? We do focus a lot on legislative issues, and Ray already scooped a couple of these items, so I can skip right over those. But we also do cover local issues as well, especially in the off season between when the legislature is not in Austin spending our money. But because this is a Republican club, I assume y'all's interest is in Republican priorities and getting those things passed. Not necessarily true of our state lawmakers, even though they do have the majority in the House, in the Senate, and in the governorship. So I know what we should expect to get 100%, right? We own the whole shebang. So you think, well, we're going to get everything passed, right? Who thought that was going to happen this session?
Well, no, we got history.
Y'all look like this wasn't maybe your first legislative session. It certainly wasn't mine. I did feel bad for those that it was. But we had, what, 8 priorities this year, chosen by you, the grassroots, the Republican voters who sent these people to Austin. And that didn't seem like too many, right? That's 140 days. They should be able to get 8 things done. They certainly had time to name roads and bridges and, again, spend the most. It was the biggest spending session in Texas history for certain. The budget is huge. But y'all will not be surprised to know that all of those 8 priorities did not pass. And so I'm just going to go real kind of quickly through what the items were, what did and didn't happen, and leave time for questions for issues that y'all are interested in. It might be this, it might be, ask me about Sound of Freedom at the end, someone talk about that too. But right at the top, y'all may remember, and it's out of order here, but it's at the bottom, but the first thing that Republican voters asked for is to not have Democrats chairing House committees anymore. Right? Everybody, every time the session comes in and that goes around the country, people are like, why do y'all do that? That's a good question. Well, this year y'all said, let's not do that anymore. How about let's just not? And remember, we tried it last time too. We asked nicely last time, and now this time y'all said we're putting it on the list, and it comes up very first in the rules before anything else happens. Well, they said, here's how sneaky they are, because as Mark said, one of the things we do is keep track of legislators' votes. And in fact, from our sister organization, Texans for Fiscal Responsibility, they're linked at the bottom of this page too. They have their fiscal responsibility index out now for the past regular session, and you can see how your lawmakers voted on each and every one of these items. Well, one of the first votes they were going to take is whether or not to ban Democrat committee chairs. Well, guess what happened? I don't know if all y'all remember.
We do. They changed the name.
They managed to call a point of order. And when I say they, who do I mean? Who's in charge?
Dave Fillon.
Who's in charge? The Republicans. So the House is run by Republicans. Dave Fillon is the Speaker. Republicans are in charge. So a Republican called this what they call a point of order when this thing came up for a vote. And Dave Fillon said, oh, your point of order sustained, so they never voted on it. That was so they could come home and you could say, why did you vote against banning Democrat committee chairs? They're saying, I didn't vote against it. It never came to a vote. So they're getting wise to y'all's accountability and trying to get around it.
Vote this session. This is a record for how many times they change their vote after the fact.
Yes, so that's these sneaky things that they do because they know now that y'all are savvy enough to follow this. And sadly, again, we try to do some of it so y'all don't have to do it every day, right? Because you have other things to do. That's why you hired these people to go there and do right. You gave them a list. You gave them a very simple assignment, and they couldn't seem to follow it. But we're there checking up on it. So that one was gone. So, but we did. I will say, they went from having 13 committees chaired by Democrats to only 8. So it did push them a little bit to reduce the number of committees that people are in charge of. And to be fair, I will say that both Democrat and Republican committee chairs managed to kill priority legislation this session. They're certainly bipartisan when it comes to that. But on the substantive stuff, I will say, as far as success this session, we like to have some of those, we really probably did the best on the issues to protect kids and especially protect them from sexualization. Again, a topic we sort of looked at talking about in that Sound of Freedom movie, but after total failure last session, they passed the ban on the what they call gender modification, basically sterilizing and surgically mutilating children who have the delusion that they're a different sex. So that went nowhere last session. They did pass it this session, but I want to tell you y'all, not to be cynical, this has passed in several other states this year. It's already been challenged in several courts and been put on hold. I do not believe that a majority of the Republicans that voted for it this time would have supported it if they weren't pretty sure it was going to get struck down by the courts. They faced your ire last time for not passing it. I think the only way they were persuaded to pass it this time is because they don't think it's going to stick. Now, call me cynical, but that's my suspicion.
Well, you know how they think.
We shall see. We'll see how it holds up in the courts. But I think culturally, a lot of the tide is turning as more people are hearing about it. So we're going to see how that plays out. But those were some wins that I think a lot of these things are going to get challenged in court before they become solid. HB 900, getting sexually explicit books out of school libraries. Y'all, why do we even have to have a law for that?
Right.
But we do. Because of course what people really want to know is how did they get in there in the first place?
Yeah.
So this is a good measure if it goes into place and they do it like they're supposed to. So we're going to have to keep watching them. That this will stop that, and they're supposed to actually have to pull out the ones that are in there now, right? Because it's not like it's like, well, from now on, please don't buy porn for the kids' libraries. They're supposed to actually go through and scoop out all the stuff that's in there. But honestly, so that's going to be a whole nother fight. And you may have heard a couple of states are withdrawing from the American Library Association, which has been very much behind this organized push across the country to get these sort of explicit materials into kids' libraries in the first place. Where now, y'all are having a fight to get it back out when it shouldn't have even been in there. But that was one that we considered a success. We did also pass requiring an online age verification to access online porn. Yeah. Who would have thought? This actually, people have scoffed, but this also got passed in some other states. And I have to say, Louisiana passed it. Pornhub was furious. They said their traffic dropped by 80%. And then Utah passed it, and you know what Pornhub said? We're just not letting anybody in your state watch our porn then. And I'm like, wow, this law is so great. If you don't even have to start checking it out, if you can just drive them out. This is the easiest win ever. So even though people are like, well, it won't keep all the kids off, but they'll find a way around it. It's like, you can drive these businesses out of your state. However it happens, I'm happy with measures that tamp down this access to that. So that was pretty good. And prohibiting the sexually oriented performances in front of children. That includes drag shows that are sexual in nature, which if y'all have read Scorecard articles about the drag shows that have been going around lately, I mean, raunchy is a nice way to put it. Right? So yes, these are some raunchy shows. It's not Mrs. Doubtfire, y'all. These aren't nice ladies, just like this is some really gross stuff that shouldn't be in front of children. And so now there's a law against it, which goes into effect when, like all these laws, September 1. So if you're seeing some of this stuff, that's why these laws are generally going to effect until September 1st. That's just the way our legislature works. One more that again ties into what we're talking about Sound of Freedom. Our state's task force on stopping human trafficking asked for a package of new laws to help them crack down on this, especially on this child sex trafficking. And so there was a bill passed that had several measures in it, including it created a state law against child grooming, which sounds like, shouldn't that be against the law? Well, there's a federal law against it, but there wasn't a specific state statute that says it's a felony if you, say, are using social media to send this sexually explicit stuff to kids and try to lure them in, which is how a lot of this stuff happens on social media. And so now, they don't have to wait for the feds to come in and work. Our state and local law enforcement, if they catch these people trying to lure kids in with the social media stuff, they can arrest them. It's a felony, and they're trying to stop it before the kids are actually trafficked. So this was, so I'm looking forward, September 1, seeing that go into effect as well. So that was, again, that was probably the most successful of the priorities. Protect our elections. Well, Ray skipped me on that one, but let's remember, restoring the felony penalty for illegal voting puts us back where we were 2 years ago. I don't consider it a huge win to just undo what we did and end up back where we were. It's not anything, but they fought all session for it, y'all. It's really hard because the Democrats were like, why do you want to, why do you want to upcharge? It's like the book. Once it's in, it's hard to get it out. So once they had changed it, it was really tough to get it back. But it's back. But whether or not it'll be prosecuted, it's a completely different story. Because one of the things that we did not get was, again, restoring the authority for the Attorney General's office to prosecute election crimes. Which y'all, I was talking to Lori earlier about the case in Kaufman County a few years ago that I sat in the courtroom on. Look, it's hard to get, and what did they do? They brought a visiting judge from Dallas. Why? Because it's really hard to get your locals to prosecute local election crimes because they too are elected. It's a bit of a conflict of interest. And in many cases, especially these cases down in the valley, they were in on it. So your local DA, if he's in on the fraud, is not going to really prosecute, right? So it's a problem. So this is why we always had we considered the state could come in and do it as well when the locals wouldn't. So that was an important thing that did not happen. Yet Dan Patrick talked early on about one of these special sessions addressing this, but we're running out of time, y'all. They're finally taking time off, and I don't know what else we're going to get to. Securing the border was another one. They had a lot of big plans and didn't pass a lot of the big plans. So they designated cartels as foreign terrorists. But most of those people, you don't know if they're cartels, right? Everybody coming across, maybe they're a cartel, but they carrying some kid and like they're a family. So you don't know. So they did a few smaller things, but not the bigger things that we wanted to pass. So that supposedly might come up on a special session if they get around to it. Defending gun rights was also on the priority list. They passed a couple of things, preventing counties from restricting gun rights and adding the option for armed security guards, or not the option, I guess it's a mandate, armed security guards on every school campus, either through a school, whether you have your school police or whether you designate a guardian program where it's staff that are there, and there's some funding that goes along with that to allow schools to pay those salaries and have those people. And then, education freedom. They passed a law that blocked schools from enforcing COVID mandates. Well, that's pretty limited. Again, that's going back to where we all lived before they laid down these COVID mandates, right? It's only COVID, so if something new comes along and it's not called COVID, if it's not school, if it's other places, a lot of those mandates are still in place. It was pretty limited. And of course, all the education freedom things are still hanging out there, again, to be determined, supposedly in a special session. The last thing on the list was abolish abortion, and absolutely nothing passed in that. Again, I feel on that one, and to a large degree on election integrity as well, the ledge felt like they checked those boxes last time. They spent a lot of time and energy on the election integrity bill last session that is still working its way through the federal courts, being challenged. They feel like they checked the box, they got that trigger law, Roe v. Wade overturned, our trigger law goes into effect, add that with the heartbeat bill. They feel like they've checked those boxes. Quite honestly, you're only going to get them to put, when they feel like they've put a lot into a certain issue, they want to break on that, focus on something else. So that did not surprise me. But there you go. There were your 8 issues. A few wins. Honestly, remember, property tax reform was not in the top 8. sure it was on the list of 15, but it didn't make the top 8 this time, right? Because what happened? The last 2 times y'all asked for it, they do something. It's like, well, they're going to do something. It's not going to be what we asked for. Let's focus on some other things, is honestly what I think happened there. But they finally did, as mentioned, pass a property tax relief bill. It's not what they had quite envisioned, but it's Abbott is now saying it's exactly what he promised. But
It'll be a percentage, can't be a flat dollar amount.
so
Keep
yeah,
raising
so
property
you
tax.
I don't know how much y'all want me to go into it. I'll save that for Q&A if you want more details on the property tax reform. But they passed. It took them 2 special sessions. They have got one thing passed, which is this property tax plan. Part of it, the thing where it's the $100,000 homestead exemption. Can I say that right? That has to be passed by the voters. So that will be on the ballot, but it won't be on the November ballot. Why? Because it didn't pass in the regular session. Special sessions, it didn't pass soon enough. So there's no timing. It won't be until the May ballot. So just be advised, but that's way ahead. But so the people will have to actually vote for some of those things that are in that plan. It's not as big as they're saying, just let me tell you. And again, where can you go to read about each and every one of these issues? TexasScorecard.com. We write about this a lot. So again, rather than listen to me, you can go home later when you want to get the rundown on what passed in the special session property tax relief. Brandon Walton's our managing editor, did a quick rundown, got all the 3 things that passed. If you want to read the bill, you can. We always link that for you. It will take you to Texas Legislature Online. I wrote that at the bottom too for those of you who don't know. That's where you can find everything about the legislature. You can link to the bills, read the text, see who voted how. You can watch videos of committee hearings and the floor debate. So we do that because that's our job, so y'all don't have to. But if y'all wanted to, it's all there on Texas Legislature Online. Again, we try to hit the highlights, give you the links for that you want to know more, but TexasScorecard.com is always going to write about these key legislative issues, as well as some local issues. So I mentioned special sessions, right? We've already had 2. The second one, Siney died after they passed property tax relief, and the hint was that the next one will be in, quote, the fall in October, because what's happening in September? Another little sideline that's not on my teaching. The impeachment trial starts September 5th. So the House isn't really involved in that except for the House members that are on the prosecuting team, right? So they'll be doing that. The Senate is basically the jury in this setup. How long that will take, I honestly have no idea. They started out with 20 articles, they call them. The Senate decided not to take up all of those. I think they're doing maybe 16 out of the 20. Again, we've written about that. You can go see exactly what they are. You can read it all out in excruciating detail. But we'll see how that goes. You might update on that. Dan Patrick today put a stronger gag order on some of the parties involved. That they're not supposed to be talking about it anymore. I guess there was too much media coverage and people were saying stuff. It's hilarious because he said, oh, some examples of what we don't want you to do are in Exhibit A. And he said, don't read Exhibit A during the court. Because it's like, he didn't want it, it's like, because it'll prejudice you if you read, but here's an example of what not to do, but don't read it, because then you'll see what we don't want you to see. But I'm not on the jury, so I read it. It was basically Andrew Murr's op-ed and then some stuff from Tony Busby saying that it's terrible. So we'll see. September 5th, it's a long ways away, right? It looks like they're going to be off until then. Does it look like they're going to even come back in session in August? Because they want their vacation, y'all. They work so hard. Actually not. They make a lot of money for not working a lot of the days. So, but we will have more special sessions. Again, as I mentioned, Texans for Fiscal Responsibility, a sister organization, they do the, what gave us our name, the scorecard of your lawmakers, all the reps and senators. So you can go on there and look and see how your guys voted on all these issues. And then we link to some other people's as well, because TFR focuses on fiscal issues, but on our website where we list all the lawmakers, you'll see that. You'll see, like Texans for Vaccine Choice has one for medical freedom issues. Texas Right to Life has one for pro-life issues. There's one for gun rights. So for each issue, there's a lot of time, people have different scorecards, so we try to link you up to a few of those so that you can assess, rather than when your rep comes home and says, what's he going to say?
Most conservative session ever.
Probably, but it's like, but their new thing, they've sort of gotten off that after 2 sessions, so now it's largest property tax cut in Texas history, and Dan Patrick started saying in the world. He kind of amped it up there a little bit, but yes. So they're going to tell you super conservative session and largest tax cut. But they are rolling in when they get their total number. I think they're saying like 18 billion. They're counting like from last time, y'all. Who does that? So they're like, it's like, oh well, if you combine it with the property tax we passed before. And now we're adding this on top of it. I'm like, who does that? You got that before. I mean, can I do that with my salary? If you add last year's and then pay it to me again this year, then it's the biggest ever.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, it's something. It's better than nothing, but there's those that argue that it actually takes us further away from property tax elimination, or specifically the elimination of the school M&O tax, which is the largest chunk of your tax bill. Because the things that they've used that aren't simply buying down, they call it, that particular tax burden, it skews the whole equation. They're going to have to all redo the math, because if your school district says they need, because they always need it, right? X amount of dollars, and they've said, oh, you have the state says you have to take $100,000 off your value. So what are they going to do? They still want this amount of money. So some piece of the equation just gets bigger when the other gets smaller, because the total that the schools take in stays the same. You're paying it one way or the other. They're just changing the way that you pay it. The whole idea was to have as little as possible tied to your property, so that your property is not at risk. Your ownership of your home is not at risk when these schools jack up their taxes. That's not. It happens some here, but it's certainly not the whole picture here. So that's on that. Anyway, I want to leave a little time for questions, because that kind of covers the Republican priorities and a few things that are still hanging out there for the special sessions. I'll start though with Sound of Freedom, because I'll mention that. I saw the movie, seen it twice now. Again, I wrote a write-up of it in Texas Scorecard, which gives you, it gives you, without any spoilers, a sense of the movie, so those that might have, who has not seen it. So if you're hesitating because you think it might be overwhelming, it's definitely emotional, but it's done in a way that doesn't overwhelm.
It's well done.
But I also include in there some background on the true story behind it, the organization that came out of that, Tim Ballard's Operation Underground Rescue, and some statistics and information about child sex trafficking. So I try to put that all in context. Give you links to more information, because people are like, what do I do now? I want to know more. What's it all about? So it's a fascinating project, including the fact that this movie was completed 5 years ago. It was a small budget movie, made at Fox Studios. It finished in 2018. Well, in early 2019, Disney bought out all of Fox's movie library, and including all their films, including that. And they just put that on the shelf. They're like, we don't want to do that. And so the producer worked with Disney worked on them for quite a while and got them to give him the distribution rights back. And then he tried to shop it around for 3 more years before anybody would take it, because nobody wanted it, because they said it wouldn't make any money. Who wants to watch something like that, right? Well, it's actually, again, it's quite compelling, and it's in a dramatic sense as well as an informational sense. So the timing, like everything else, y'all, the timing works. Well, the timing works. Obviously, 5 years ago was not the right time for this to be hitting, right? That's how this happens. But now it is. And maybe because this is the propitious moment to start this movement against this horrible thing that they wanted. So we'll see. So I do encourage you to go see it. If you're curious, a little more information about it, You can just go to TexasScorecard.com and search for Sound of Freedom, and you'll come up with my write-up on it. It'll give you a little more information. There's also a lot of other interesting, there's been other interesting documentaries made. There's actually a true documentary, this is based on a true story, called Triple Take, that is the documentary of this, one of the incidents depicted in the big rescue mission depicted in Sound of Freedom. There, Jakob Williams, if you are familiar with him, his ministries, he released a film earlier this year called Sex Nation, focusing on this very similar topic, as his sister, if y'all may know his story, was kidnapped and sex trafficked, and he spent, I think, 6 years searching for her. He now lives here, and his ministry focuses on this issue and helping people and stopping the porn. What Jakob Williams says, he says child pornography is the gateway drug to child sex trafficking. So the porn and the kids being able to access it online, the pedophiles being able to get to the kids through online avenues, through social media apps, it goes right into the thing in the schools. If y'all read Texas Scorecard, I write a lot about school pervs. It's my shorthand for them. Not to make light of it, but it's happening. Why? Because the kids are being sexualized at a younger age, and these teachers, not being screened very well, right? There's a big shortage, are using social media to get to directly access the kids and to groom them up for actual sexual encounters. It's horrifying. It's just horrifying. Oh dear, I agree. Who wants to talk about that anymore? These are sometimes unpleasant topics, but they're there. We cover them. But what issues? Who has questions? Who has issues they want to know more about that I haven't covered?
Erin, just a statement. Last night on the news, I believe Channel 8 News, they stated that Texas had fell out of the top 5 business states to move to where business can come. And they cited the first reason they cited was Texas was not trans friendly.
Yes. Remember that was the big argument.
The second one was the grid. The grid was hadn't passed,
So y'all may remember when this, what they used to call bathroom bills.
Yeah.
In a derisive term, bathroom bills. Who cares about that? Well, people did, and remember. So that was what. Before Dennis Bonin, it's like, well, even this goes back to Joe Strauss's day. This isn't business friendly. Who's going to want to have a business here if boys can't go in girls' bathrooms, y'all? And we were like, what are you even talking about? But this is how they think. And newsflash, y'all, it's still how they think. This is a big undercurrent. It's still there. There's still, again, I'm pretty sure that Dave Phelan and several other Republicans would not have voted yes on this bill if they thought the courts weren't going to knock it down. They see this as bad for business. But yeah, it's like, hey, if you look at you always have to look beyond the headlines. That was a great article and a story to look beyond the headlines. Because it's like, wait, we're still #1 in all these actual business things, right? The business, we passed a new bribe system for the businesses, right? We got rid of Chapter 313, and now it's Chapter, I think, 406. So we just renewed that. We're economic development. I call them bribes, but if we're such a great place to do business financially, why do I need to pay you extra to move your company here? But we do all that, and then it's like, oh well, it's this thing we just passed. It's like, well, that's not business friendly. I'm like, says who? So it pays to look at how they're grading. I was happy with our score, to be honest. Because I weight those items differently, and I'm sure that you do too. And so do the majority of voters in the state. That's why we elected people to pass the things that we passed, even if it's grudgingly. This is what the majority of people here want, right? You want to move to California, feel free. The door's apparently wide open if you can get yourself. And we have plenty of U-Hauls going that way, I hear, from Texas to California. So people are happy to relocate. Yes, sir.
What about the ammo bill?
Really nothing. Second Amendment related. Got any traction? Again, they felt like, hey, we got y'all constitutional carry. What more do you want, people?
Well, they were talking about Texas is going to start manufacturing their own ammunition.
See, No, so good or bad, none of that
Can you
stuff.
repeat the question?
He said that an ammo bill about Texas starting to manufacture its own ammunition. Again, because like if you do,
Only trying to get votes.
remember we were going to manufacture our own light bulbs too when those were getting outlawed. Because if you keep it within the state, you don't run afoul of these federal laws. So this did not, again, almost none of those, no bills in that whole general topic really got any traction in hearing.
So the bill about the COVID mandates, does that
Yes.
include children in school or that not being mandated to do the COVID shot? Does that include that?
Correct, so they're not required to do that, to do the vaccine, which if anybody's, had the kids go in the first, they do that. So not that, not the masks, not any of that stuff. But private businesses can still require it of their employees. Government employees can't. Government employees can't be mandated, but private employees still can. So it's not all gone by a long shot. For the school kids, it's gone.
Well, the FDA approved putting the COVID shots in with the required to go to school, so how do we keep that from happening?
Well, the FDA can approve it, but it doesn't mandate it. It's our Texas schools decide what our Texas kids need to
Whatever
get
the FDA
to have.
says is what they're gonna go with.
So, but they can't now, because this law says,
This does take that out.
yeah, this law says no. You can, that's a recommendation, but it's not it can't be a requirement for the schools.
I have a statement to make.
Okay.
Okay, your group does a fabulous job, but you can tell when you're doing good when Speaker Phelan comes out with this statement. He was censured in Orange County, as we all know. Here's what his office comment was. He says, tonight's action is nothing more than orchestrated effort to undermine the Speaker and state representative who have refused to bend to the will of West Texas billionaires. The House Chamber and our.
Yeah, for y'all that don't
Y'all
know.
get to blame even when you weren't down there doing
Yeah, I know.
something.
I don't live in West Texas, and I'm not a billionaire, and neither is anybody in my company. But we have in the past had the support of Tim Dunn. Everybody knows who he is. He lives in West Texas. He, at times, I guess on paper is a billionaire. The market fluctuates. He doesn't just come in. He doesn't come in with big sacks of cash and just drop them off on the weekly. Or any of that. That's always the rap. But a lot of lawmakers live in West Texas too. Actually, a lot of them have plenty of money. And a lot of other people also donate a lot of money. And it's not the money and it's not the will. One person can say all they want. I can say all I want. It doesn't make y'all, the voters, the citizenry, want things. Y'all want change because you didn't get your simple 8-point list of items for which you hired these people, right? This is not, if you're like, I'm not happy, you did some, fine, but I expected more. It's that simple to try to say, oh, I'm being persecuted, whatever. It's this one person, really, because y'all, I talk to roomfuls of people like y'all every single day, and not one of y'all has gotten your $1 billion check from anybody in West Texas to say that you would like a speaker that was more responsive to your party's list. It's the same party he claims to belong to. It's not that hard. It's not that hard to figure out. But yes, we are happy to take those slings and arrows. And the speaker race is funny because I don't know if y'all remember Texas Scorecard back in when we had the organization called Empower Texans, kind of an activist wing. That organization really started the whole people talking about the importance of the speaker's race. You speak against the law for regular folk like us to advocate for against the speaker's race. This was an internal thing. You couldn't run ads, but who remembers that? Was it Al Strauss? Yeah, the buttons and all.
We did that. That was our group.
Because before that, you weren't allowed to. But the law had to change to allow regular folk like us to weigh in on that particular race because it was considered, oh, that's just an internal business. Y'all can't advocate for that. I'm like, well, it certainly affects the outcome of what happens there. So this is what, taking a few, Twitter pot shots from people who are, again, paid to do this job. If Dave Phelan didn't want this job, he certainly doesn't have to continue collecting millions in campaign contributions to do it. That's fine. He asked for it, he got it. If the constituents aren't happy with his performance, they're not just free to tell him so, you're kind of required to, because right, he's your employee, not your boss. What does a good boss do? They tell their employee what they want, set expectations, and let them know when they're not doing the right job. So that's just doing your job. And he's doing his, but he's doing some PR. So I don't know how much time I have, but I'm happy to answer more questions until I'm told to go.
Can you please explain the process that a legislator goes through when they decide to change their vote?
Yes, that was interesting. So that happened an extra lot this session. So what
Number
happens?
one for Kaufman County.
So, was he the number one? So
156 times.
So a lot of times they will claim, there was a lot of claims this year of the malfunction, the button malfunction. Oh, I'm sure I pushed the yes button, but somehow my vote registered as no. And if you've ever watched, it goes pretty fast. You start hearing the dinging and the button, have all members voted, have all members voted. And then it lights up with red and green and the occasional white. That's I'm here, but I'm not voting. It's an abstention, basically. It shows that you're here, you're not voting either way. And then that's it. Woo! That's the winning vote. That's what goes on the official record, they call it. But you have, I believe it's 5 days. You may add a note to the record. You don't get to change the vote, right? Even if the whole 150 of them said our vote was wrong, the way you recorded it, it wouldn't change the actual vote. It just goes on the record. It said, oh, it showed me voting yes, but I meant to vote no. And so then they can sort of have it both ways. So for the people who thought they should vote yes, like, for the people who didn't like that vote, oh, I really voted no. So they want to kind of have it both ways. Now, again, so there have been some votes where it's like, oh, somebody like broke party line, and you're like, wow, they broke party line. They're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And you can, I mean, some of these are mistakes, but they go to all the trouble. It's a show.
So the vote is not counted until 5 days after?
No, the vote.
The official vote
the
never
official
changes.
The official vote counts regardless of if everybody says it's wrong. The changing of the vote in the record does not affect the final vote. It's just
PR.
yes. I was going to say covering your backside. So it's. Or it's again, if you start getting a lot of pushback for your vote, you're like, oh, I meant to vote the other way, y'all. It does not change the outcome of the vote at all. It's just PR. But it goes on the books so you can see later. But people do it a lot. Again, often because they're hearing from their constituents after the vote. Because y'all are paying attention, which is so great. I mean, that was really the best thing about this session, y'all. Is there was so much citizen participation like I've never seen. I don't know if people were sort of hopeful that they were going to get things done. I don't know if it was hope. They were hopeful, they were mad, it was some combination. But like where I live and all over the state, people were chartering buses so that groups so that groups could go to the Capitol to make it convenient and to make the camaraderie and the working together and the planning. I've never seen anything like it. It was just amazing. So every win that happened is on y'all. I mean, people are like, oh, thank you, lawmaker. They work for you. You think how much of this would they have come up with besides the spending if y'all hadn't asked for it, right? They were fine not doing half of these things last session when y'all asked for them. So do not think, oh, we were just getting around to it. They were going to pass casino gambling, y'all. If there had not been outcry. So do not think, again, I was saying it's like their priorities are not your priorities.
They're not.
Which is why there's so much of a mismatch. The key to activism is to push them to make your priorities their priorities as well. You know, you have to make it worth their while that those things match up more. And that happened more this session than ever. And I really, the whole Democrat chair vote, that was just to try to discourage y'all, right? Because everybody was excited, so they moved the day, and then it's like they were not even going to vote. They were trying to deflate people right up front. Just, it's like, we're never gonna, but that didn't happen. People were like, I can't wait to come back next week. What's next on the agenda? We're getting this next thing going. I mean, we're gonna bring in even more people. So it was really amazing to see. So all the success goes to y'all. Unfortunately, it's a job that never ends. Sadly.
You know how many Republicans in the House have committed to voting yes for no Democratic chairs?
No, because they wouldn't stay. They were so cagey this time.
Did you hear there were 3 of them? Only
I heard
three?
that.
Okay.
So, that were committed,
I heard there were 3 that were committed to vote no Democratic chair.
oh, regardless, yes, to vote no, yes. So yes, the ones that were serious about voting no said so. The ones that weren't, said, well, we'll see. That was everybody up where I live. It was quite a, but it was a marker. And it rather than discourage people, it encouraged them to know the playing field and go
Had the
in
opposite effect of
stronger
what they
through the
wanted.
whole session. So kudos to y'all for every win. There's going to be some specials. You might get a few more things, and then
Okay, Erin, will Empire Texan, not Empire Texan, the scorecard kind of keep up if we call periodically and see if any more counties have impacted by censoring or by, we're just trying to keep a list of those counties.
we are too. So we really count on the grassroots like y'all to tell us. So this is the best thing. Y'all are my best sources. I get
Dallas did it
Yes.
the other night.
I wrote about it. Read Texas Scorecard. You can read all about it. You can find the links. And so as we hear about more, I update them and I add to the list. Here's all the ones that have done it before. There's probably some across the state that I haven't heard about because I don't know anybody there. But if you hear of one, tell me and I'll call them and try to see. But it's word of mouth from you guys is how I hear about a lot of it. I mean, I had to call up Dallas because I knew it had, it's like, where are y'all posting this thing? Give me a copy. They're like, oh, we got to run to it.
I think we're up to at least 10 for sure that have passed it. And I presented it at the last Collin County GOP meeting, so we will have a vote on it coming up here.
Okay.
Also, I had heard that out of all of the Republican bills that were written, only about 6% passed. Does that sound about right to you? Because if they say they had a successful session, I would bring that up.
Well, it's not like you want a whole lot of bills. It's not all about the numbers. But over 1,200, I know that over 1,200 bills passed and got sent to the governor out of, 8,000 filed. I don't have the split by whether they were Democrat or Republican authored. But a fair number, again, they say it and it's true, a large number of the bills that pass are bipartisan. Because they agree on a lot of things, y'all, even if you don't agree. So they do though, they're the ones passing the bill. So thank you again for having me, I really appreciate it.
Thank you for
Thanks for coming out.